Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life Antidotes podcast. I am your host, Kalia, and thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of Life Antidotes podcast. So if you joined us for the first episode where we talked about self-esteem and self-hatred, hopefully you got something from that, and there was some practical wisdom that you could use when trying to face having good esteem and rebuilding the image of yourself, and being able to believe in that image that you've created. So here at Life Antidotes podcast, we believe that there are no new problems, only new solutions, and hopefully you can glean from our conversations and use wisdom and use this podcast to become more self-aware about what solutions you might need in your life. And so today we will be talking about the antidote for pain and trauma. I know that seems like kind of deep. We went from talking about self-esteem to talking about pain and trauma, but yeah, I feel like pain and trauma could be a very good teacher as to how you perceive yourself and having good or bad self-esteem. So addressing pain and trauma, which you don't have to had a tumultuous childhood in order to experience pain or trauma, or to have the effects of pain or trauma leaving residue on your life. So I think it's very important that we understand that how we interact with the world every single day, whether it's, the pain of, not being able to make it to work on time, or the pain of, your boss quitting at a job, or, having a revolving door of teachers when you're younger. All of those things, while it's not like physical trauma where, when you're in the hospital, you go see a trauma surgeon, it definitely is something that has an impact on your life. And thinking about what trauma is and how do we define that, it's something that is deeply distressing or disturbing, that overwhelms you in life. So if we keep it at that bare minimum or definition, we could say that school is traumatic. We can say that, waking up every morning is traumatic, and let's not forget that we are in a panoramic. So that's definitely a very traumatic, different thing that we literally don't even have language for and are just trying to get language for now. So thinking about pain and trauma, and how do we, what is the antidote for it? Because, that's one thing that's incurable. Pain and trauma is something that comes with life. So it's more so, how do we think about our pain, and how do we think about our trauma? What is our perspective of our pain and trauma? So one of the things I think is definitely important is having acceptance and a resolution that you don't place blame on yourself for one, pain or trauma of other people, but also knowing when you are inflicting harm and trauma to yourself. So when we think about what pain and trauma is and how it informs how we see ourselves, if you went through some type of sexual abuse when you were younger, or if you were a child of divorce where literally your family broke apart and you had to, relearn what family was, what the definition of family was, and how to, navigate having basically a stepmom and another mom, or, your dad and his baby mama, or whatever the case may be. All of those things are where your reality was literally broken. You have to, come to the resolve that the things that happen around us are not a result of us. Where, even if, and especially in the two examples that I gave, you can't take on the blame of, you know, something that was done to you. So if you are a child or an adult of, some type of sexual trauma, you don't want to take on the responsibility of what that man or woman may have done to you, because they have their own mind just as you had your own mind, and they made the decision and the choice to do what they did to you, and that is nothing on you. So becoming resolved in that fact and accepting that will definitely allow for some freedom and some healing for you, because you don't have to beat yourself up for something that you could have done or you should have done in that type of situation, because that was a decision that they made. And that same rationale and logic goes for even a parent or a child of divorce. Mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, or mommy and daddy don't have the strength to, continue to stay in a relationship anymore. While, you are definitely a factor in those things, you are not the determinant of their relationship staying together. And especially at 3 and 4 years old, if you're that young, you can't be, literally, you can't be the determination of why they stayed together, or why they didn't stay together. That was equally decisions on their part. So you can't take on that burden on your back and blame yourself for something that, was done to you, or just a consequence of life and that happened in your life. So it's I'm not saying that this is easy. It takes, a lot of work of reminding yourself of this isn't my fault, and I don't have to be sorry for myself for something that happened, to me. And being able to walk in that is a journey. And for all of the situations of pain and trauma, it has to come with an acceptance of, okay, this happened. How do we move on? How do we pivot? Because, mind you, just because, it happened doesn't mean that we've processed what happened and what the ramifications of that would happen, that in which that happened. So I feel like if we allow ourselves to, see how this one thing, this traumatic or painful experience shaped my world, it gave definitions to things that didn't have definitions, or etc. If we really sit down and think about the ramifications of those things, and allow ourselves some type of locus of control, as to, how do I take back what that did to me? How do I change from that? And I feel like that's where that processing of something that happened to you happens, or that's where you also gain control of your own life. So if you are, a child of divorce, psychology tells us that, you might start to, I can't think of the word, you create, or, you may have a anxious avoidant attachment style, or, well, if we don't want to bottle down into the terms of it, your attachment style is definitely affected because of, or can be affected because of, being a child of divorce. And thinking about what the ramifications of those things may be. If you let life happen to you, which I'm not saying that this is a good or bad thing, but if you just let life happen to you and, you don't address the situation of, man, my parents are not together anymore, and you just, you start to, it might change your definition of love. If they didn't stay together because, he or she fell in love with somebody else, and didn't think that their spouse partner was good enough, that might frame how you define love. Oh, love is only as good as until something else better comes along. So we unintentionally absorb these definitions based off what's been modeled to us. And if you don't actually sit back and recognize what those things are that we've absorbed unintentionally, that's when you lose that locus of control over your life. I'm not saying that this is easy. I'm just saying that these are things that can happen and does happen on a day-to-day basis. So if you really sit back and think about what the ramifications of different pains and traumas in your life, and what it taught you, good, bad, or indifferent, because pain can be a good teacher and it can be a bad teacher. So it might teach you to guard your heart in some situations. It might teach you to build walls in other situations. It just depends on the person and depends on the circumstance. You need to really understand what the ramifications of different pains and traumas in your life, and figure out, is this a lesson that I want, or a philosophy I want to continue living out? Is it a value that I want to continue living out? Or is this something that I actually don't like this? I don't like the fact that I have a limited view of love, or I don't like the fact that, this taught me to keep men on a leash, or it's multiple things that, you can take from pain, and trauma. It's just up to you to decide, are these ramifications and are these consequences good or bad for me, and how are they serving me? Do I want to continue to live these things out? So yeah, hopefully that was helpful and not too dense of information. I feel like I might be talking a little bit too fast. But I want to talk to you like, we just a couple of bros, hanging out. Female, male, etc. They, them, etc. So I just want to make sure that I'm, giving this information to you as plainly as possible. And I know that there's multiple different pains and traumas in life, and we don't have the time to sit through and talk about the different ramifications of all of those different things, especially because they look different for everybody. I think it's definitely important if you are going to address and process pain and trauma, you have to talk about what this taught you and what the ramifications of those things was. So hopefully that was a helpful little nugget and a little, a practical solution of how we can journey from pain to, purpose, to love, to a new job even. Like, it's pain and trauma could be a prohibitor in multiple different areas and facets of life. You can be, happily married, but, because of different things that might have happened in your childhood, or might happen when you were in high school, or many different things, you might be fearful or, have inhibitions in your work career. So, pain and trauma takes many different forms and has many different consequences, ramifications, and lessons. And so I hope that this was helpful in understanding that and being able to move on and process from it, because moving on is not burying it, in the cemetery. It's, making sure that that pain doesn't ever live again. Because when you just put it in a cemetery and just let it be there, it's still alive. It's just, just not directly in your face. Hopefully that analogy worked for y'all. But thank you for listening and hanging out with me today. I'm hopeful that, this was great and you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.